First Nation land claims, there may be some implications involved with this, and currency and commodity risk. So it's just important to be mindful of these risks and take into consideration some hedging strategies to overcome these threats. So some things that we've identified is your valuable land claims. This is important for yourself as a company because since your land claims are very valuable and you do have high tangible assets, this is important and you will be able to obtain higher debt financing or any other financing in the future. So you do have a very strong balance sheet as of now. High quality ore reserves. You are known for using high quality ingredients, so this is very important for your brand image. And we also know that you are interested in the option and you're finalizing the terms to perhaps create a separate entity for the new Albany expansion. There are some great benefits with this as well. So there is reduced risk for your separate entity financial statements by creating a separate entity for the Albany mining company. There will be no debt acquired on your balance sheet directly, and will just be kept separately off onto Albany's own financial statements. Some challenges we do foresee with this as well are your low cash reserves, so expanding may be limited and may be limited to the options that you are available for you. So debt financing may be a bit higher with your financials, with low cash balances. And although you do have high collateral with your valuable tangible assets, so that may offset that risk. There's also the risk of the mine flooding. So due to the location of the Albany mine, is it within close proximity with the Hudson Bay, you are at a significant risk for flooding each year. And one of the potential challenges we do foresee with having a separate entity for Albany is that there is a higher financing cost because it is considered a riskier entity, since its cash balances will not be as sufficient as your company, and it will not have as many assets to use as collateral compared to the company. So the criteria we use to come to our decision today and help evaluate our alternatives is we want to ensure that you have adequate capital to finance the mining operations with each alternative. We have enough cash to pursue these options. And we want to ensure you have a strong capital structure and maintain a strong balance sheet. So what will be the implications on your debt ratios, like your debt to equity or your interest coverage ratios? Will you still have enough cash on hand to cover your interest payments, or will you default on your debt? And we also want to look at the option that has the highest net present value. Although we do believe the other criteria are weighted slightly more, just because they would help you remain sustainable for the future. Just because a project has a higher NPV doesn't necessarily mean it's the better project to pursue if it concludes that you're being more risky as an entity. So the alternatives that we've come up with today is either you stick to your original financing plan, or you pursue Mimosa's offer to fund you the cash for the mining expansion in exchange for royalty payments. So we recommend that you accept Mimosa's Ventures offer and negotiate for more suitable terms, and Arissa will walk you through the analysis of alternatives and how we came to that recommendation.
All right, so for the analysis that we did on your company to determine whether or not Mimosa was a good deal for you, we were lucky enough to work with your analysts, and they provided us with some very valuable projections for our further analysis of your company. However, we still had to make some assumptions of our own. I'll just give you a brief walkthrough. They will hold for all scenarios. So first, we implemented the half-year rule, which if there was a cash flow projected for year one, it would be split up into 50 halfway through the year and then again at the end of the year, so 50-50. We did this for two reasons. The first being that your mine is projected to open in June of 2017, halfway through the year, and also the half-year rule is more true to the nature of cash flows coming in constantly through the year. So that's why we implemented that. We also assumed that the debt was required to open Albany mine. There is no principal payments being made. We did this just for simplicity of determining account. However, principal was not taken into account, but that will be talked about again in implementation later on. So obviously all the revenues that are received from the new mine are not realized fully in cash. So we assume that 65% of those revenues were realized in cash, just so we have a projection of the cash on hand. And this is what we understand to be industry averages, so that's why we choose 65%. And again, so for the first year of the mine being opened, there's no chance of a flood, but after there is a probability of the mine flooding after that. For the first 1 to 3 years is 30%, as quoted by your analysts, and then 10 to 15% per year then on. We just average that 10 to 15% at 12.5%. So beginning with the original financing plan you have, first of all these numbers are in millions of US dollars, I forgot to mention it. I also only included the first 6 years just for the sake of space, but the final numbers are based on the whole 25 years. So for the flood insurance, which we used the statistics that your analysts gave us, the repair cost is estimated to be 10 million per year, 30% for the first 4 years, 12.5% thereafter, and then as well for revenues. What we did for revenue is we calculated, so if you look at each column in 6 months, we calculated 4 months, because there was an estimated 4-month lifetime, or a 4-month delay. So we just subtracted the 4-month loss of revenues, and then again the probability. So we're assuming that that would be your insurance cost for the flood, based on your analyst projections. And this isn't an overall cash flow for your company. This is just for the Albany project. So if we take a look, also the cost of capital, it was projected to be 10% currently and decrease to 8% as Albany mine stabilized. We use an annual average of 9% between the two. And then again, this is at the semi-annual rate of 4%. And then bringing all the cash flows forward, the original financing plan that you projected was about $5 billion. So going on to the Mimosa Ventures. So your original financing plan, you would have to take out $250 million in debt right away to pay about 7% interest per year. And then you would have to take out another $145 million in 2019 for part 2 of phase 1. And again, 7% interest per year, and then you would have funded $5 million from your cash on hand. So Mimosa Ventures would decrease that amount to, so they would provide you with $100 million upfront, you would only need $200 million, and then you would have to do any cash, you have to pay any cash on hand for 2019's expansion, you only have to pay or acquire a loan of the $150 that is required. So here we see the NPV is of $5.1 billion, whereas before it was 5.3. It is lower, but as Nicole spoke to before, we're weighting the risk associated with the decisions more highly than the net present value. Obviously, $5.1 billion is still great. It's not cause for concern. It should drop from $5.3 billion. So, as Nicole said earlier, we would like to go with Mimosa. However, we would like to offer up some negotiations. So, what we think would be best for you would be to. So first of all, Mimosa wants us to pay the 2%, or for you to pay the 2% royalties out of your head office. As was mentioned earlier, we suggest that you open up a separate entity for the new mine, and then we can negotiate with Mimosa to pay the 2% royalties out of that separate entity. So that way, if the mine fails, and we still guarantee them the 5-year guaranteed returns, the whole company wouldn't go under, it would just be a separate entity, and then our contractual obligation would be cut after those 5 years, and Pan America would still have, so be sustainable. Unfortunately, I did miss a slide here. It was just an analysis of all 3 opportunities. And so while the NPV, or the net present value, is lower for the Mimosa and the original plan, the debt to equity ratio for this project decreased significantly. It was almost 5 based on the plan that you provided us, and then with Mimosa, it's about 2.3. I should also mention, I just forgot, instead of the 2% royalties for the negotiation, we would offer 2.2%, just because they did want to head office so to satisfy them, and that way we offer a bit of a higher royalty percentage.
So as you can see here, between our two options, the original option and going with Mimosa, we found that going with Mimosa was the better opportunity. Both opportunities satisfy our desire to get enough financing to fund this mine project. However, the original option, where we're taking huge amounts of debt, put us at an uncomfortable debt level. And what we've been really trying to drive home today is the sustainability in this type of industry. If you want to remain sustainable as a company, we recommend that you take on lower levels of debt and therefore go with the Mimosa Ventures option. So, we recommend that you accept the Mimosa Ventures option and negotiate for more suitable terms with Mimosa. So let's look at some risks, because there are quite a number. First risk I'd like to talk about is the First Nation. Now, there may not be a disagreement, but as we've seen in the past, there has been protests and rallies in concern with natural resource companies and their operations close to or inside First Nations territories. As a company like yourself, you probably do not want to have this type of publicity. So we recommend, in order to mitigate this risk, that you foster stronger relationships with that community. So one thing that you can do is go work with the chief and council and come up with sustainable ways in order to maintain a more clean environment in that region. Also, you could offer to employ some of the people from the region in the mine to increase the wealth of that community. So another massive risk is commodity and currency risk. As Nicole talked about earlier, if we look at the commodity graph and how the price has risen so dramatically, this can make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It almost feels like, with everything else dropping, why is this commodity doing so well? Maybe it should be doing that well, but there is a certain risk of it crashing, like we saw with oil and many other resources. So in order to mitigate this commodity risk, we highly recommend that you implement a forward hedging strategy. We partner up with a financial institution to hedge out your strategy with forward options. This is similar with the currency risk. Now, you asked us to look at your the currency risk, the currency forwards, and determine how accurate the Bank of Canada's estimates for future currency rate between Canada and the US are. And unfortunately, we found that they really weren't accurate historically. However, that being said, it is important to still have estimates, because from these estimates we can come up with a cost and ideal of how much a forward hedging strategy would cost. Now, luckily at Alliance Financial, we do have a hedging sector, so we recommend that you come to our sector and we can help hedge some of your risks through our hedge fund. The other risk is flooding. So how can we get rid of this risk? Well, simply buying flood insurance. Now, this isn't super easy in Canada, since there is no flood insurance in Canada. However, we estimated a cost, and if you partner up with a number of insurance and reinsurance companies, we're certain that you can come up with an affordable rate to ensure the long-term sustainability of your mine and your company as a whole. So, what do we have to do now? A lot. Right off the bat, we need to enter negotiations with Mimosa. Now, we are okay with accepting that 2% royalty and paying out of the head office immediately, but preferably, we'd like to, again, reduce our risk and offer up a higher royalty to them in order for us to pay out the cash flows to Mimosa through our separate entity to reduce our default risk. You need to continue fostering relationships with the First Nations. You've historically done very well in this regard, so we can recommend that you continue in this area. Begin building the mine, of course, and obtain some of the loans necessary to continue on with more financing. You also need to acquire $75 million in equity and implement a hedging strategy, which we can, again, help you with. In the 6-month to 6-year range, you can now start to implement the first phase of the mine. Oops. You can evaluate the flood risk. After this point, after about a 3-year point, the flood risk is going to reduce. So we recommend that you go renegotiate with the insurance companies your insurance rates for your mine. and determine a loan payment schedule so that you can determine your long-term financial position. In the long term, you'll implement the phase 2 portion, which will cost $300 million. Reassess your hedging strategy because it's 6 years from now. We don't know where the market is going to be with commodity and currency, so it's important that you reassess your hedging strategy and reevaluate the relationship with Mimosa. At this point, the 5-year guaranteed cash flows that you've given through royalties has expired. It's been past 5 years at this point. So you can reevaluate your relationship with Mimosa and see if you can expand it and find more synergies together. So, what have we done for you today? How have we made your company more sustainable through our recommendation? Well, first off, we've recommended a solution that provides you financing for the Albany mine. Secondly, we provided a strong capital structure solution so that you can, again, remain sustainable in the future. And we've reduced your risks in a way that keeps you authentic in the community. Thank you. We would like to accept questions now.
Do you think this still would be a good venture if we cannot get insurance for flooding?
There's interesting alternatives to insurance, like catastrophe bonds and those types of things. I wouldn't go into it without insurance, given that the first 3 years there's a 30% chance of flooding. It seems like a pretty large risk, and flooding could continuously reoccur. These are just estimates. So we would highly recommend that you get insurance, and I think it's very likely that you can find insurance or insurance-related solutions with catastrophe bonds and other solutions that you can find with your insurance companies.
You have recommended to go forward with a hedging strategy. However, we haven't seen any numbers that would be related to the pros and cons of such strategy. So how exactly, other than just from a very high-level perspective, are you changing your recommendation?
It's the numbers that we have right now, the projections for forward prices, we've gotten from your analyst team. And based on the last projections that they had as well, we found that they were quite incorrect. So we set up a meeting and we were trying to meet your analysts and to make those forward prices more accurate, especially as Nicole mentioned earlier, there's a lot of uncertainty with the American economy and the prices that they quoted us were quite high. So we're going to just wait and see and we'll be able to provide you with some numbers that way.
Determining the loan repayment schedule, do you guys have a recommendation on that?
We don't at this time, simply because we just don't have balance sheets or income statements. As soon as we can acquire your financial documents and see where your company overall is capable of setting a payment level, then we can move forward with that.
Did you guys do any sort of sensitivity analysis around the dramatic fall in the price of the commodity? You identified that the price of this particular commodity had risen. Did you look at a downside, and would that impact the recommendation that you made?
We did do it, but we haven't provided it in this situation. So we found that it's unlikely that if you look at Black-Scholes formulas and the probability of it decreasing at such a ridiculous level, you're profitable by a huge margin at the moment. If you were to see an unprecedented fall like you saw in oil, then yeah, you have some risk. But that's why we recommend the hedging strategy. With the hedging strategy, you are guaranteeing the prices, especially if you do a long-term futures swaps. It's not necessary to fund that risk at the moment. But if you'd like, we can come back and get you those bottom line results.
Can I ask as a follow-up, why is it that you believe that an approach as the Black-Scholes formula would be somewhat convenient to answer the questions my colleague?
The Black-Scholes, because it's based off of probabilities. So if you look at commodities, you can look at the probability of a certain event happening through the Black-Scholes to price futures options. And through that formula, you can decide the likelihood of a certain event. Now, the event of your company becoming improbable through the Black-Scholes formula, which is used by many industry professionals, would suggest that it's extremely unlikely. But that's not to say it can't happen. Of course, this formula is not perfect, but it's a good way to base your estimates on.